Good evening, good morning, all that good jazz. Hope you're doing well on this wonderful Saturday evening. I wanted to share something with you coming out of Psalm 22, and for once, I'm actually not talking about Genesis today. So, I believe that Psalm 22 is an excellent psalm. I believe it's a messianic psalm referring to the sufferings of Jesus on the cross. And I actually believe it's a wonderful medical description of what Jesus would have been experiencing. However, that's not the point I'm coming from on today. We are going to look at some biblical texts and various translations, or as I like to say, various interpretations, and I'm going to let you make a judgment from there. So, Psalm 22, verse 16, um, very variant verse, depending on what translation you're reading or interpretation you're reading. So, first, I'm going to read it to you in the Masoretic text. I believe that for the most part, most Bibles are translated from the Masoretic text, or as it's referred to in Hebrew, Nusach HaMolah, the Masoretic text. The Masoretes were rabbis who sought to bring the scriptures together and to correct any errors that had come into it around the Babylonian captivity. So even in ancient times, there were already variants today. I mean variants of that time. So the fact that we have multiple translations today based off of multiple interpretations really isn't a new thing. You know what it says in Ecclesiastes: "There's nothing new under the sun." So first, I'm going to read it to you in the Masoretic text. Okay, so this is Psalm 22. And I'm sorry, I have so many Hebrew Bibles that, for the most part, the way it's placed together, if I say something's verse 5 for me, it could be verse 7 for you, or it could be like a whole nother chapter. So let me look at one of my English Bibles. Let's see. Should be verse 16, Psalm 22, verse 16. So I'm going to read it to you from the Masoretic text first, and then we're going to do some investigation and look at other translations and see what it has to say. So it says, Ki savuvuni kalavim adat malaim hakifuni ka'ali yadai varag lai. And so that is often translated around the likeness of, this is coming out of the NIV version, dogs surrounded me, a pack of villains encircles me, they pierce my hands and my feet. Well, that sounds a lot like Jesus. If I were to go to the average church and say, hey, this is a prophecy about Jesus, most people, for the most part, honestly, it might be news for some people that was actually in the Old Testament, because remember, Jesus rebuked people. Remember the conversation between him and the other two gentlemen on the road to Emmaus was one of my favorite conversations. If I could have a time machine, I would love to go back and hear how Jesus started from the prophets, how he started from Moses, and he broke down everywhere that it prophesied about his death, burial, and resurrection. I would love to have been in on that conversation. And so most people may not even know that, there are verses that just blatantly say that the Messiah would be beaten, pierced even. And so, but for the most part, if I read that in a church, if I go to your church, no matter what, if I say, hey guys, this is Jesus, most people wouldn't really need an explanation. That sounds pretty straightforward. But we have an issue here. So, in addition to me mentioning Nusach HaMolah, the Masoretic text, which I believe most Bibles are translated from that text, that would be this text right here, compiled together from the rabbis. And they even added the Nikud, which are the vowel markers, so that we would know how each word is pronounced, and definitely helps with the translation. It appears that if you go to the Dead Sea Scrolls, and now to pause again, the Dead Sea Scrolls are ancient manuscripts. They're actually 1,200 years older than the Masoretic text, and they are one of the most valid sources to give validation to the existence of Jesus. And they do contain, if I'm not mistaken, fragments from the Bible. Every book in the Old Testament, with the exception of Esther, please don't quote me on that, but they do for sure contain fragments of the Old Testament. And it wasn't just biblical text. There's other things within the Dead Sea Scrolls, but for the sake of this conversation, know that the Dead Sea Scrolls, ancient manuscripts, they contain biblical text. And so I'm going to show you, I'll point out the word of discussion here that causes a lot of debate. and that was the word that I read, ka'ali. This word is the word for debate. And remember that Hebrew is read from right to left. And so apparently, this is how it looks in the Masoretic text. Okay, we have this is called the Kaf, this is the Aleph, this is the Resh, and this is the Yod, the smallest letter. So apparently, the rabbis changed the letter. Well, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, that Yod is actually a Vav. And it seems that if you look at the Masoretic text, they shortened it to a Yod. So one of my resources is Dr. Eitan Bar. He has a book called Refuting Rabbinic Objections to Christianity. So it seems that the way that would be translated in Hebrew would be like a lion or my hands and feet, or as he put it, so word for word, or in other words, my hands and my feet are like those of a lion, which doesn't make sense. And so I have several Bibles here with me, and we're just going to look and see how other people translated this. So I have right here the Kol Menachem Tehillim, one of my favorite things to read. Let's see, and it has the Hebrew text on the other side, English on one side. Very beautiful. I would suggest to add to your library. Let's see how he translated. Okay, so for me, it's verse 17. For dogs have surrounded me, a group of evildoers encircled me, like a lion at my hands and feet. And I don't mean to sound biased, but that kind of doesn't make any sense. We go from dogs surrounding me, group of evildoers encircled me, like a lion at my hands and feet. I mean, it makes sense, you know, the imagery. Basically, you got a lot of evildoers around you, but it doesn't seem like a complete thought, if I do say so myself. So let's go to the NIV. The NIV says, dogs surrounded me, a pack of villains encircles me, they pierce my hands and my feet. Pretty straightforward. Let's go to the Complete Jewish Bible, an English version by David H. Stern. May his name be a blessing. He actually just recently passed away. Psalm 22, verse, again, 17 for this one. Dogs are all around me. A pack of villains closes in on me like a lion at my hands and feet. But he does have an asterisk, and he has a footnote at the bottom, or they pierce my hands and feet. And so he at least puts that in there. I have the translation by Robert Alter. Very unusual translation, but a very beneficial one to serious biblical students. So Psalm 22, let's see if this is verse 17. Yeah, verse 17. This is how he translated it. For the curs came all around me, a pack of the evil encircled me, they bound my hands and my feet. Huh. That sounds like a little bit close to home. I don't know the theological background of Robert Alter. However, I know that he does not believe in Jesus for sure. And I have another Bible with me, another Tanakh. This, very beautiful. This was, I think, from the Society for Distributing Hebrew Scriptures. Let's see how they interpreted this. For dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. So very interesting. Very interesting indeed. So the Hebrew word there, that's up for discussion. If you look at the root word for ka'ali, it is this word, ka. That's the kaf, the resh, and the hey. So kara. And it can mean to mind or to dig. So I think another way you could read that is they have mined or bore a hole in my hands and feet, meaning, as Dr. Eitan says it, they have pierced my hands and my feet.